with snow since the weekend. And joining me now from there is Martin Frizzell. Good morning, Martin.
Happy New Year to you, Penny.
Happy New Year to you, Martin. What's the temperature there today?
Officially at 5 a.m. this morning, we are the coldest place in Britain here in Sussex. It is -9 at Hurstmonceau, which is about 10 miles from where I'm standing, and it's not far off -9 here.
And then, of course, there's the wind chill, though it doesn't look particularly windy there this morning.
It's not, but there's a slight wind chill, probably taking it down to, say, -11 or so, and that, of course, is the problem when you're taking in cold weather payments. Now, Labour are insisting that they want cold weather payments to include, or when they're actually working out the method of triggering in the kick-in factor and actually paying it out, to include the wind chill factor. They would tell you, and certainly just before Christmas when we were in Brixton in an old lady's house, there was a wind there. It comes through the air bricks, it comes through the floorboards, it comes through cracks in windows and doors and drafts. It does affect it. They will say that's important and must be a consideration. The government, they'll say it's very difficult, along with the Met Office, to actually forecast and predict how cold it is with the wind chill. Therefore, they will not take it into account.
What else do they want?
They want a more fairer system. They basically think perhaps, along with the SNP as well, who've been lobbying MPs, certainly in Scotland just a few days ago in Hogmanay, that perhaps the whole idea of payments should be based on a pro rata system. Perhaps pensioners and those in need should be given money for the whole winter, not just whenever it's a cold period. They're saying it's the iniquity of it. How can you have 5 freezing cold days and perhaps just 1 or 2 days when it is slightly above freezing and not get any money, and yet have 7 days when it's freezing and get all the money? That's a problem. And later on this morning, in just half an hour's time, so we'll be talking to a pensioner and asking her in the street here just the problems that she faces. And obviously, she, like millions of other pensioners, thinks it's a very unfair system.
Martin Frizzell, thanks very much, and speak to you a bit later on.
Well, Britain isn't the only country suffering appalling weather at the start of the new year. In the United States, storms have hammered the northwest, causing mudslides and power cuts, while flooding has caused havoc in California. There have been 14 weather-related deaths so far. Joining us now on the line from New York is our correspondent, Alan Fisher. Good morning, Alan.
Happy New Year, Matt.
Happy New Year to you. Which areas have been worst hit there?
Well, as you say, the northwest corner of the United States seems to have borne the brunt of the New Year storms. Things have been bad since around Christmas, but certainly they brought in the New Year with more snow, which then turned to very high water levels and severe flooding. And some of the storm front has actually swept down and hit the winemaking valleys of North California late yesterday, and has now spread to some parts of Southern California. In fact, in the last couple of hours, we've heard that 27 people, tourists, fishermen and children, were swept off a rocky jetty in Southern California. Now, they've all been accounted for. None have been killed, but there have been several serious injuries in that incident, as I say, in the last couple of hours in South California.
Are these storms typical of winter in the States?
Well, certainly America battens down the hatches at this time of year. People are worried at the storms, but normally it's the East Coast that bears the brunt. Now, we remember just 12 months ago that New York and most of the eastern seaboard were blanketed in the worst storms in 50 years. And then just after a week, when people thought things were getting back to normal, the storms came in again. So it's unusual that the northwest has suffered quite so badly, but they have indeed suffered badly. As I say, just before Christmas, there was great heavy falls of snow in areas like Oregon and also in Washington State in the northwest corner. And over the last few days, temperatures have been unseasonably mild, and those high temperatures have led to the snow melting quickly coming down off the hills and causing a great deal of flooding. And that has also caused problems with mudslides, closing many roads and railway lines, and it's also brought down power lines, so people have been without power. It's been very difficult for the people of the northwest. In fact, in Washington State, the governor there declared 17 counties a state of emergency there in the hope that they will get some sort of federal aid. But it's thought that the bill for the damage caused in the northwest corner and also in California could top up to £200 million.
It certainly isn't just us. Alan Fisher in New York, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
And we have a look at some of the stories making the front page.
Cars a day. It's a favourite cut-through for those entering and leaving the city from the west. But all that's set to change on January the 22nd. An 18-month experiment starts preventing through traffic. The aim is to curb congestion and pollution.
It's a very significant problem. When you take it that we've already got some 9,000 vehicles travelling through these streets, frankly they struggle to get the horse and cart through, let alone modern vehicles.
Some environmentalists argue the scheme will simply transfer the traffic and pollution problems to other areas of the city.
Well, it's a partial solution for a very small part of the city, an unsatisfactory solution. And the big problems which Cambridge have in relation to traffic aren't going to be solved by it.
The closure of Bridge Street will undoubtedly have a major impact on the lives of drivers, pedestrians and businesses throughout the city.
A nature reserve.
A cold number country will be with us until the weekend. Temperatures have plunged to as low as -7 in some areas, and the wind chill factor has driven that figure to as low as -21 in coastal areas. However, freezing the wind chill factor, it's not taken into account when calculating cold weather payments. In a moment, we'll be talking to Labour MP David Winnick about his campaign to get the government to speed up payments. But first, Martin Frizzell joins us now from one of the coldest parts of the country. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning, Matt, and Happy New Year. Officially, it is one of the coldest parts of Britain. It's -9 degrees this morning at Hurstmonceux, which is 10 miles from where I'm standing in Lewis, between Brighton and Eastbourne. As you can see, the snow is still lying here in the ground, now caked into black ice, very treacherous on the roads, and it is freezing, believe it from me. Now, in this street here lives Gwen Drew. Now, Gwen is a pensioner, and like millions of others, she was interested to know, would the cold weather payments kick in? And of course, they have done, because it has reached below freezing over 7 consecutive days. But unfortunately, Gwen has some savings, not much by any means, and it means that Gwen does not get the £8.50 that other pensioners do get, who are not well off but have to have their income supported by extra money. Gwen, good morning.
Good morning.
Having a cup of tea, I think it's the smart thing to do, isn't it?
That's right.
How bad's it been over the past few days here?
Well, pretty bad since Monday. It started snowing and it's been pretty, treacherous outside.
You've not been able to get outside?
I haven't stuck my nose out, no, I haven't gone out.
And in this cold weather, you live in basically one...
More or less in this room, yes, yeah.
Let me just give the camera a wipe with something, Gwen, if that's all right, because it's actually steaming up in here because it's so cold outside that as soon as we come in here, it starts to condense on the lens. So let's do that so we can see you better. Now, of course, other pensioners who are on income support will get the £8.50, but you don't.
I don't get it, no.
But you're not very rich, are you?
Not really, no, not really there.
And you could do with that money?
I could do, yes.
Now, if you were eligible for that, of course, it's taken into account basically whether the temperature falls below freezing over 7 consecutive days. Now, Labour want wind chill to be taken into consideration as well. Does the wind coming in make much of a difference to the temperature in your house?
Well, it probably does here, what with the drafts coming in and under the doors, and blows quite bad up this road, this is a very cold road. So we do get the wind quite a bit up here, and I say it's very cold.
And if you wanted one thing the government or people in power to do to help you through the winter, what would it be?
Well, make life a little bit easier for us, in the cold weather like.
Meaning that yourself, all pensioners, irrespective of how rich or poor you are, all pensioners feel it particularly at this time of year. Because the fact is that the more elderly people, get sick, die in winter than during the summer, because you feel it more. So that's your message to the politicians. All pensioners should get it.
Should get it, yes, I should think so, yes.
Okay, lovely, Gwen. Well, it's 1 million more pensioners, we understand, and the elderly and those who need help are going to receive cold weather payments later on this week. The government says that will be £12 million it will have paid out so far this winter. Penny.
Thanks very much, Martin. Well, the Labour MP David Winnick, who's leading the campaign to speed up cold weather payments to pensioners, joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Now, you were listening to what that lady was saying there, talking about the wind chill factors. She wants all pensioners to be given cold weather payments. Would you go that far?
Well, I don't know about that, but certainly pensioners on the lowest incomes should be helped. At the moment, of course, it's those who are income support, and even those have had to wait a long time, some 8-9 days, during this very, very cold spell, before any payments are being made, and I consider that totally inadequate.
Let's just take a look at the moment at who actually qualifies for cold weather payments. Now, have you any quarrel with that? Recipients must be on income support and either pensioners, disabled or families with a child under 5.
Well, the most immediate quarrel I have with the government is that the system for triggering off the payments is so bureaucratic that it takes some time before the criteria is reached. In other words...
You mean the 7 days?
7 days, 7 consecutive days of freezing weather. Of course, if it breaks, as it often does after 4 or 5 days, not a single penny is paid. And pensioners are in a very, very deplorable condition when they're terrified of keeping their homes sufficiently heated because of receiving bills which they can't afford to pay.
So what do you think should happen then? If they should get blanket payments through the winter,
well, I think there should be a
months?
more flexible system. I mean, the system now, frankly, is to try and minimise the amount of payments. I doubt if any minister privately would disagree with that. It's to make it as difficult as possible. And as I've just said, it's been freezing, or very nearly, for over a week. And only now, today, is it likely that most pensioners who are eligible will receive the payments. And I don't consider that anywhere near adequate enough. Too many people, elderly people, poor people in our country are terrified of keeping their homes adequately warm, and they put their health seriously at risk.
I should better say that we have spoken to the Social Security Minister, Andrew Mitchell, and he says that it looks like payments will have been triggered over most of the country by noon today. He also says the scheme has been improved as a result of a review this year of increased weather stations and payments triggered on freezing and not below.
I would say
you still say it's not enough.
I would say to him, go and meet pensioners in his constituency or in mine or in any other part of the country. Ask them what they think about the present situation. And I would like to make this point as well. If cabinet ministers had to rely on the sort of income that so many millions of pensioners have to rely on, they wouldn't be very happy in this very cold weather.
OK, we have to leave it there. David Winnick, thank you very much for coming in.
It's 6:43.